Hi, today I'm going to be showing you a simple tutorial for Unity's new input system. Things to note is I'm using Unity 6 and I'm on Linux for Unity using VS Code, and let me just tell you those three don't go together really well. My autocomplete is not working at the moment, so everything I'll be doing is either reading through the documentation here or through pure memory. But anyways, before you get started with using the input system, you have to download it. So you go to the package manager and you type in input system and you install it. And you should be able to, once you reset Unity, you should be able to find an input action field that you can create. If not, there is a page in the Unity Learn um, web page called Setting Up the Input System in Unity 6. If you need more help with setup. So, the first step in creating your inputs is we need an input action asset. So let's just call that input action. And basically this is just a box that will contain all the different types of control schemes you want. So if you want joystick input controls, if you want keyboard, keyboard mouse, you want touchscreen, maybe even VR, you can list them all here. So let's just create one right now. We're gonna just keep things simple. So let's just do keyboard controls. And as you can see, you have different different devices to be recognized for your control scheme. We just want keyboard. So let's just save that. And we have an action map. Basically, it's just what kind of action you want and what kind of inputs do you want for that action. So if you want like fire and you want to press middle button or left button or right button or space, you can do that. Let's just call this player movement. So like for this, I can have like joystick input movement, I can have keyboard, I can just, whatever they provide. Um, so I want to read my inputs as X and through just X and Y coordinates because I want top-down movement um, in the XZ plane. So what I mean by that is for my cube, I do not want to move in the Y direction. I just want to move in the X or the Z or both. But I do not want to move up. So let's set up our controls. Let's just get rid of this. Let's call this movement. And we will be adding a up, down, left, right because we are 2D. So that's W, that's S, that's A, this is D, D. And this is specifically, we're going to lock it down to being allowed for only the keyboard control scheme. And that's pretty much it for creating your action map and actions for that map. So then, what do we want to do with all this? We're going to be reading these inputs through an event system and using a callback function to handle those events. Why are we using that? Well, in my opinion, it makes code less bloated and yeah, it makes code less bloated and it's just much more easier to understand and set up. So how do we do that? So our player needs a player input, and you should have a player input component inside. You should be able to look it up. If you don't, you might have to do some research online for how to figure that out, read the manual. I think I had to toggle something to get this, you know, as a component available for searching. I might be wrong. So we have a player input, and we want to drag our input action asset because we will be reading the inputs from this action asset. And our default scheme will be keyboard. So what exactly is default scheme? So default scheme is just the starting control scheme you want. The current scheme is the one you want to set as the scheme you are using now, but it's not the starting scheme. The starting scheme will always be the first scheme in your list of control schemes right here. This will always be the default. What exactly is auto switch? Auto switch is basically just Unity's input system recognizing the current device you're using. So if you're on Android, you can check if you have auto switch toggled, if your current device is on Android, and if it is, you can swap the current scheme you want to Android if that is necessary. If you untoggle auto switch, it will be the first device recognized, which we all develop on PCs, so the first device will be a desktop, which is a pain in the butt when it comes to testing mobile games. But there's always a workaround for that. Anyways, so let's continue on. So we have a player input, and I said I want to handle our input using events. So we have events here, we have player movement. Now we have to add, we have to have a callback function to handle these events. So I created a movement script. And we don't have anything. Well, actually, let me open this, and I will be. Sorry, I was testing something. So what you should be seeing when you create a new script is nothing, basically, because we haven't defined our callback function yet. So we'll be doing that right now. So to do that, we can write a function called public void, and you can name it anything if you want. Just call it move event. It's an input action dot call back context. Let's call it context. I am trying to remember this from the top of my head. I know there's documentation that I showed. And so basically, when you handle an event, there are phases, if I remember correctly. So there are different phases that your input goes through. There's a lot of documentation to go through. So I don't want to bore you with the details. But you want to check if your context has been performed. If your context is performed, and then if you stop performing, this is stopped performing context, and we'll just go here. So, so we want to read from context, which is the inputs we defined in our input action asset. We can do that by calling a function in context called read value, and we want to read the type, which is a vector2. Now we got some things we've got to set up. To get our player moving in a basic fashion. So we're going to be moving by force. So we're going to be using a rigid body. Get component. And we need public float move speed. We need a direction. We don't need to have a global variable for input. We can just keep creating a local one and then just read and just update this direction. So basically, actually, it's a vector. That's a vector 3. It is vector. Yes, yeah. So this only has x and y input directions. So we want to just take those values and funnel it to the x and z coordinates because we're not moving in the y direction. So let's just do that. So if you, excuse me, if you performed something, read the context, read the value, direction.x equals input.x, direction.z equals input.y. Else, there is no direction. It's just zeroed out. It just means you stopped moving. I think this means that you canceled the context being performed. Uh, anyways, so let's see. So we have our direction. Okay, and now let's just so we're gonna be moving using physics. So we're gonna do direction times move speed. I know you can use time.delta time, but for this example, let's just keep things much more simple. So force mode dot force. Okay, and if I give this a large enough value and I make sure my functions are set up correctly, move event, see schemes, okay, we should be able to move. And there you go. And that is how you use Unity's new input system in a simplistic way. And as I said, the cool thing is the auto switch allows you to recognize the current device you're using, and that makes switching controls between different devices just so much easier. I don't remember if you have to check the current device, um, check the current device being used, and then swap that to the control scheme you want. Um, or you create another callback function that is specific to the control scheme you want, and then you just toggle a mobile UI if you have one, in your hierarchy and just use that to play your game. So for example, there's a game I worked on just for fun. This game is currently for both mobile and desktop. Right now it's on desktop, so you're gonna have desktop controls. But if you play on mobile, the controls will be completely different. Let me see if I can show you some code. So this is basically, see, I have the callback function for gamepad, keyboard, mouse. This is basically for mobile control. So basically, I generalize movement for Android and keyboard, mouse. And then I have rotation. See. And I think I have somewhere else. Yeah, I have an input manager that sets the current control scheme based on the current device being used, so that I can switch controls based on, yeah. I have code to swap between controls for mobile and desktop. Yeah, it was a big headache, but it was really awesome to nail down. But that is it for the basics of how to use Unity's new input system. I hope this was educational and hope you have a great day. Bye.